What is up, you guys? Happy Friday. I have a brand new video for y'all. So I know in the last one we touched on learning intro stretches for the entirety of the body, but today we're going to focus on solely our hips. My favorite of all-time practice, whether it has to do with strengthening or stretching, has to do with the hips. I know in the last video I touched on how the muscles within our jaw are said to be linked to those in our hips. So when you think of like when you're angry or you're upset, you tend to clench your jaw, you want to hold emotion in, or if you're holding in words, if you're in a verbal argument, you might clench your jaw. So anytime we tighten the jaw, we hold in tension, emotion, that goes to our hips. And it's said to go to our shoulders as well. You might notice that you carry your stress in your shoulders. Think about emotion in the hips. So we're going to focus on the four main big muscles in our upper legs and our hips. So we've got the quads and the hamstrings, which we kind of worked with last week or last video, whatever it was. And then we're working with today as well our abductors and our adductors. So our abductors are the long muscle that comes in the outer hip that when you think of going into poses like yogi squat, or if you are opening your hips in any pose, that is going to be the muscle in your outer hip that's opening. So that is the abductors. And then our adductors are the thin muscles that come on our inner thighs. So think if you're squeezing in chair or if you're twisting and really pulling everything into your midline, think about adding to the midline. So abductors, adductors, our quads, and our hamstrings. A little bit in our glutes as well we'll look at, and then our hip flexors are the muscles that come from our upper thigh up into the lower core. So we'll focus on all of these muscles. We'll get a little stretch in. I can't wait to share with you guys. So we'll have a couple of props here. These totally are up to you. You don't have to use them, but they'll help you get into our poses a little bit better, maybe deeper, or help support you if you're really craving that support. So I have a towel here. You can use one from your kitchen. You could use a blanket if you have it. Really anything that if you have hardwood floors can help you kind of open up a little bit more. And then to counter that, if you have carpet in your house, you could use a magazine, a book, something that is relatively slippery that will do the opposite of what a towel on hardwood would do, if you get it. Cool. And then I have two blocks here. I'm sitting on one. I have another one with me. Just like in the other video, if you have canned vegetables, if you've got a book, or if you have a block at home, that's awesome. We'll use those. So go ahead and get your props ready, and we are going to start today in a seat on our shins. So another option too, if you have achy knees, and like in the last video, so I had you use a blanket, take your towel, just set it right under the joint in your knees where you can bend, really get that motion. So you've got that nice support here. We're gonna start off in a hero's pose. So as we sit on the shins, your heels are going to open up just a bit and your tailbone will go right between them. So from behind, it'll look something like this. You just wanna inch right in here so that you can have a nice support for your hips and tailbone. You might even walk the legs a little bit wider. See if you can lift up and then roll your calves out from under you so you have this nice leverage to slide right in between the heels. This is a super gentle starting to our practice. If you notice that maybe this feels really intense or this is a motion or a movement that you're not used to, grab your first block and bring it under your hips like I have. I prefer to have it just because I like that extra support and I feel like it's not putting too much pressure on my knees, as I mentioned before. So we're just going to start in heroes for a moment and kind of collect ourselves, get ourselves ready for this practice with our hips. And as always, you can close your eyes or keep them soft, gaze to the ground. It's really up to your personal preference and how comfortable you feel with your practice. Just coming to the breath for a moment, as always, seeing if you can start to slow down, invite that deeper belly breath in. And choosing to set an intention for the next 30 minutes or so of allowing yourself to release any emotion that is holding you down, holding you back. Identifying what emotion you're feeling today. Maybe you are feeling better than yesterday. You have a little more energy and happiness, and that is great. Maybe it's a rough day for you. Maybe you're feeling extra sad or scared or anxious. Whatever emotion is coming up first here, sit with it for a moment. Identify what it is. If you're having a good day, focus on that. Focus on maintaining, cultivating, and growing that energy, that drive, that happiness. Or if you're like most of us, you're more than likely feeling that anxiety and stress. So choose to, within the next 30 or so minutes, see if you can release that, let it go. Disassociate from it. Focus on the good and the happy and the drive. And tell yourself now that, again, this is your space to be vulnerable, to come to your mat, to feel safe. So maybe you cry today. Maybe you let go, you have some big emotional awakening. Know that this is totally common in hip openers and hip practices. One minute you could be feeling it, the next moment you're sobbing and you have no idea what's going on. Know that that is pent up emotion coming out and letting go of you. Affirm to yourself now that it's okay to have these emotions, to cry, to feel angry, to feel something moving within you. We must let go of that drags us down, let go of the dark, the distraction, to come to the light, to come to happiness and energy and drive. So as you're sitting here now, just take a couple more rounds of breath for yourself. You might wiggle out your jaw. Imagine now you're just starting to wake up the hips. So you wiggle side to side, up and down. You might even open your mouth. Again, know this is your safe space. Nobody is laughing at you or watching you. You can make the craziest faces ever, and it'll feel really good, I promise. Beautiful job. So start to open your eyes, come back to your mat and the space around you. And from here, we're just gently going to walk our hands forward, come off of your hips. If you're super tight, this might feel like a nice relief here, letting go of that stretch. And just windshield wiper the hips back and forth, wake up your legs, hear those little cracks and pops as you start to let go of that last stretch. If you'd like, you can take a couple rounds of cat and cow. This is a nice warm-up, no matter what area of the body we're focusing on, whether it is strengthening or stretching. This is always a great way to wake up the spine and your hips. Awesome. When you're ready, we'll walk our hands back to our knees, then just swing your feet around in front of you. We're coming into a different seat. So option here, you can take your towel or blanket. I like to place it right under my tailbone, so it kind of gives a nice tilt. So there's not as much pressure on the hips and knees. Feel a little extra support. So we're coming into a seated butterfly pose. The soles of our feet together, knees are wide. Then from here, see if you can walk your heels in just a bit closer towards your pelvis so you have this really nice opening in your inner thighs. This is really tight and you notice you're way up here. See if you can walk your feet out a little bit further away. It's okay to be a little different. Again, our poses will never be the same, and that is what is so beautiful about this practice. You are you and I am me, so let's just make the pose work for our bodies where and how we can. So again, if you feel really tight and this is really intense on your hips, take your blocks or your books. We'll slide them under our knees and outer thighs for a little extra support. And you have a couple options here. You can hang out really breathe into the stretch. If you'd like to go deeper, see if you can keep length in your spine as you start to slide your chest forward towards your toes. If you're feeling really open, you could hook your elbows to the top of your shins. Keep holding your feet. And then use your elbows to your shins as leverage to go a little deeper. Now, option 3 here. Forgot to mention, it'd be great to be set up by a wall, like I am. So if you're at the wall, you can take this super deep. We'll slide our hips right up against the wall. Come to our backs. Then same thing, we'll set up how we did before. Just let your feet slide down the wall. This allows you to open a little bit deeper while really still feeling supported. So if you come here, just take your hands, press your knees open. Now we don't want our arms super engaged. We don't want to be cranking the knees open. Just imagine softly rotating your hips open. Beautiful. So continuing to find that deep breath, letting that breath wash over your hips, starting to gently open, create a little bit of ease with your breath. Beautiful. So whatever version of your butterfly you're in, take a couple more rounds of breath. I'm going to be back and forth to the wall a lot, so ignore any funny faces I make. And as you finish up your last round of breath, we'll come up, release, take both feet to the floor, and then windshield wiper your knees back and forth. Just letting go of that inner thigh stretch, starting to invite a little bit more awareness to your abductors. Awesome. So from here, we're going to walk ourselves down to our back, then pull your knees to your chest, walk side to side. Should feel really, really good for the top, the back of your hips. Maybe even rock all the way over so you invite that massage to your adductors. Awesome. So come back to center. We're going to find a happy baby. So turn so y'all can see. Knees are going to come wide. Hands to your shins, maybe your ankles, or the outer edges of your feet. Just start to open wide. Really draw your knees in towards your armpits. Think about wrapping your legs around your torso. Obviously, we're not going to go that far today, but we can pretend, right? All for the sake of the stretch. So we're hanging here in stillness or rocking side to side, again, inviting in that massage. Same as in the last stretch video. Notice if you're pulling your knees really tight in so your hips lift. See if you can back out, keep that connection to your sacrum, that flat bone at the base of your tailbone to the floor. Awesome. So come back to center, drop your left foot to the floor, right knee stays to your chest. And we're going to cross our right ankle over the top of our left knee. Use our right hand to press our knee open. Keep flexing your right toes back to your knee. Keep pressing through that heel so we protect the top of the knee joint. And as you press away, again, you can imagine rolling that outer hip open. You might even bring your hand to your right thigh. Just gently roll it open. If you hear cracks and pops, again, we want those. We love those. Lets us know we're doing something right. Awesome. We're going to keep this reclined figure four. Just start to drop your foot towards the floor. So you're going to come into a twist. The outer edge of your left thigh hits the floor with the sole of your right foot. And take your right arm open, gaze to the right. This time now, left hand is going to roll that hip open as deep as you can go. Awesome. Take your left palm to the floor. Start to press yourself open to untwist. We'll uncross our legs, switch sides. Again, you can always windshield wiper, hang however long you'd like in a stretch. This is up to you, it's your practice. But if you're ready, left ankle on top of your right knee. We'll set up for that reclined figure four again. So gently press your knee open, flex your toes back. Again, as many times as you like, you can take that left hand, roll your hip open. Just kind of bringing a little more awareness to what we're doing within our bodies. Beautiful. And we'll take that twist. Knees fall to the right, gaze to the left. Right palm rolls that hip open even wider. Just hang here for a few rounds of breath. When you're ready, untwist back to center. We'll grab the back of our thighs, rock up and down on your spine. We're going to come back through to a seat, and then all the way over to our hands and knees. So from tabletop, press back through your right heel. And step through to your hands. We're finding this low lunge shape we took last time, so this should be familiar. Your hands can come to these blocks again if you'd like. Maybe this time for a little deeper of a stretch, you can walk your hands to the top of your thigh. Now, to mix it up, you can stay here. Try and stay so you guys can see me. Or you can tuck your back toes, lift your left knee, and really drive back through that left heel. So this should really engage the front of your left hip flexor. And if you send your hips forward, you might even feel it in your right glute and a little bit into your right abductor. Again, always you have that option to lift your left arm up and overhead. Breathe into your psoas and hip flexor. Awesome. Circle that left hand down. If you lifted your left knee, drop it back to the floor. And from here, we're going to swing our right knee back through tabletop. And then switch sides. So left foot steps up. Again, take whatever version of that lunge you'd like. You can keep it low, lift your hands. Maybe tuck those right toes, drive back through that right heel so you really breathe into your right hip flexor. Awesome. When you're ready, come back down. We'll swing our left knee around. From here, tuck your toes, lift up through a downward facing dog, just enough to walk your hands back to your feet, the back of your mat. So keep a soft bend in your knees. We're just going to fold forward, really open up the hamstrings before we come to our next stretch. You can grab opposite elbows with a deep bend in your knee, ragdoll back and forth, just letting your low back and hips start to decompress. If you think about our anatomy, when we stand all day with our vertebrae stacked tall, there's so much pressure coming down, really focusing right here on this big hip bone. So there's a lot of tightness there on top of our emotional tightness. So allow yourself to really hang loose and imagine that tightness pouring out of the crown of your head down to the floor. From here, we'll grab our blocks or books under both hands. And I want you to take a really big bend into your left knee. Start to press back through your right hip. So imagine sliding it towards the wall behind you. You could stay here or reach that right arm up. Take a twist. This is a great stretch for your low back and your abductor. So coming from the side, it looks like we're pressing back, rolling our chest open, really finding this beautiful expansion in your right side. Awesome. Come back through center. Both legs are softly bent. And we'll switch sides. So right knee bends, left hip presses back. Maybe you circle that left arm up, open your chest. to center. Start to walk your feet as wide as your mat. Then we're going to turn our toes out. Heels will face in. From here, you can keep your hands to your props. Start to drop your hips down. We're coming into a yogi squat or malasana pose. Now, this can be super intense. If you've got really tight abductors, your knees might be falling in. We want to avoid that. So see if you can walk your heels in just a bit closer. And we have these props here, our favorite friends. You can take one, slide it under your hips, and then sit down. You could even come to a chair, your bed, really anything that you can sit on and focus on opening your hips. It's a very flattering pose, I know. So hands to prayer, elbows to the insides of your knees, not right on your knees, inner thigh parts so you kind of protect this joint. Thigh part, words, God. Anyway, press in, knee to elbow, elbow to knee, and then use that tension to open, crank your hips, really start to find this opening in your abductors. So when we think about strengthening and stretching, we know that we have opposing muscles. We've got biceps to triceps, quads to hamstrings. We've got our pecs to our traps. So think about here, as we're stretching and lengthening our abductors, you're engaging your adductors, you're engaging your glutes. So you're really squeezing to hold here if you're off of that block. If you're down, maybe you're not engaging as much, but you definitely feel some engagement in your outer hip, right? Cool, I know you do. So open, lift your chest here. If you practice a lot and you are used to this pose, you even have an option here to try and engage your abductors even more. Lift your hands, squeeze your glutes to stay low. Beautiful breath, just a couple rounds here. See how deep you can go. Awesome job. Start to float your hands back to the ground. Carefully lift your hips back to that fold. Just release that stretch. You can ragdoll out, maybe take a twist, really anything to release your hips. From here, keep your feet wide. Take your hands to your props. We're going to step our left foot back, come straight into a lizard pose. So to refresh from the last video, our right foot is going to be to the outer edge of our right hand. Then you can stay here or maybe tuck those left toes, lift your knees, going to really deeply stretch that hip flexor on the left side like before. Again, same as last time, you have an option to take a twist, right hand to your knee, press and twist, come to the outer edge of your right foot. Awesome job, back to center. Drop your left knee, swing your right knee around to table. Then keep circling up, left foot step straight to the outer edge of your left hand. Find lizard on the other side. So again, we are working with what we've got. Maybe this side feels a little more tight than the other, but see if you can allow yourself to stay balanced. So if you lifted the back knee last time, see if you can do it here. Know that you've got your props to help you however you need. Maybe you don't lift as high, but see if you can find that integrity to lift and root back through your right heel. Awesome, back to center. Then we'll swing back around to tabletop. From here, I want you to extend your right foot behind you. Then step through to your hands again. This time we're going to start to inch our right foot over towards our left wrist. And then drop your right knee towards your right wrist. This is a half pigeon pose. This can be super intense if you've never practiced, so got a couple versions for you. This would be considered the full version of half pigeon. We want to think about squeezing those adductors, the one adding in the center, inner thighs, squeeze them together, rotate your left hip forward. We don't want to be collapsing on the right hip. If you notice you are, take that book, slide it under your right hip. So that'll give you a little extra lift and it takes a little bit of pressure out of your knee. So option one, right here. Option two, drop onto that right hip. draw your left knee to the sole of your right foot. This is gonna be a little less out of alignment, but it's not as damaging on your knee if you're forcing that alignment, and it's getting the same stretch, and it feels great. So, hang here. You can fold forward as if you were in full half pigeon. Next option, come to your back. We're coming to that reclined figure four again, so you might want to come to a wall for this one if you want to take it a little deeper. Left foot can be to the floor, right ankle on your left thigh. Hang here and just play with this reclined figure four. See if you can go a little deeper than before, or option one, step your left foot to the wall. We want our shin to be completely parallel to the ground, so that might mean you back away just a little bit so you have that alignment. And then see if you can start to open your thigh, your hip with your breath. Last option is if you'd like to take it deeper, but you're not quite to full half pigeon, come to your back, grab behind your left thigh, draw your left knee into your chest. So we're getting the same shape as in half pigeon. You can stay still or rock it out, go side to side, really massage out that muscle as it opens. Whatever version you're in, just take a couple of breaths here. Imagine your breath washing over that hip joint, just letting go of any dark sadness, emotion, tension, anxiety, anger, washing it away, cleansing it, inviting in space and light and love. Awesome job. So coming out of this, we're going to meet on our right hip. So if you're in half pigeon, drop down, pull your left knee in. If you were here already, awesome, stay. If you're on your back, pop up. From here, we're going to take our left leg, swing it around so it steps over our right knee. Coming into a little pretzel leg twist. You're like, what is going on? I'll walk you through it. Cool? So right heel pulls in towards the left hip. Left heel pulls to the outer edge of the right thigh, around towards the right hip. So we've got this really awesome pretzel shape with our legs. If you're super tight and you're not feeling it, it doesn't have to cross over yet. You can stay here, practice getting that length, getting that stretch. But if you come to the full expression, see if you can kind of rock back and forth on your hips. We want both tail points, tailbones rooted to the floor. Cool. So as you get set up, we're coming into cow face pose, or Gomukhasana. We call it cow face because that's what it's named, right? I guess. The full expression of the stretch would be to take your right arm up and overhead, left arm wraps around, we lean back, so we've got this really lovely shape. But we're not going there today. We're focusing on just our hips. So hang out here, you can sit with the stretch. This can be really intense for your outer hips. If you're feeling going a little bit more, keep that length in your spine, belly in. Just start to lean forward over your left knee. Keep that length as long as you can, then you can drop your head. Let it hang heavy here, just sending your breath to your outer thighs. Beautiful. When you're ready, we'll back out. Swing your left leg around to come out of it. We're coming back into tabletop, so just get there when you can. Take a moment to set up. Walk your big toes together, knees wide. Press your hips back to your heels. Just take a child's pose for a moment. Allow yourself to come back to center. And take a moment to be present. Comparing your right hip to your left. Maybe you notice all of that new space you've created, all of that new light, that openness. Noticing any emotion that might have come up in that deep hip opener. Noticing it and then letting it go. You are not your emotion, your emotional state. Emotions come and go. There's no need to hold on to them. Awesome. When you're ready, we'll come back up to all fours. We're setting up for your pigeon on the other side. So again, left foot steps up, and walk your toes to your right wrist, drop your knee to your left. Your shin doesn't have to be perfectly parallel to the top of your mat here. You can have your heel drawing into that right hip, just focusing on squeezing in, squeezing those adductors. Whether you're here on your hip, on your back, just take a couple rounds of breath. Try and create that same space on this side. Great job. Whenever you're ready, stay here however long you'd like, but we're gonna come into that cow face pose on the other side. Left hip drops, right foot swings around to step over that left knee. As we get set up here, take a moment to rock and roll, settle into both hip points. Stay tall or start to fold forward. Allow for a deeper stretch in your right abductor. Beautiful. Start to come back out of it. We'll swing our right knee around. We're going to come back into tabletop for just a moment. Just sway your hips back and forth. Release that stretch. Notice all of that space you've created. Now that we've stretched out our abductors, we have one final stretch for our inner thighs. So, in my opinion, the deepest hip opener is frog pose, which we're about to get into. So, from here, you have your towel or your magazine, depending on if you're on hardwood or carpet. Bring it to the outer edge of your mat. So it's on the floor, it's away. You can easily slide it wherever it's going. From here, we're going to place one knee on top of that towel. Hands under the shoulders, basically squaring off our midline right to the outer edge of your mat. Before we send our hips back, turn your toes out. So think about flexing your feet out. Toes point to either wall, on either side of you. Begin to push with your knee. Open your hips. Now you might be here today. Maybe this is enough, and that's awesome. Stay here, breathe through it. Notice what comes up. But the deeper you go, start to open your hips. And then once you've found your edge of how far you can go, you could stay here. Or start to press into your palms, send your hips back towards your heels. Really feel this awesome stretch in your inner thighs. You can stay on your hands. Maybe you're up on your blocks or your books for a little extra lift. If you'd like to go as deep as you can, see if you can come down to your forearms. And then as you do, you're still pressing back. So imagine you're trying to rip the mat in half. Knees are pushing back, hands pushing forward as you send your hips back to your heels. Notice if you're squeezing your glutes. See if you can let that go. Really send your breath to your inner thighs. Just like we did last time, we're breathing through resistance, through tightness and tension. Face is soft, jaw is soft. Don't allow that anger, that sadness, stress, emotion to stay bottled up. Let it go. Take open mouth breaths if it feels nice. Whenever you're ready to come out of it, again, stay however long you'd like. But if you're ready, you're probably ready to be done with this. Walk your hands back under your shoulders. We're going to engage the core first, so belly into the spine. Now we're working our adductors, so squeeze that knee back in, squeeze your thighs together, and gently walk yourself back to the center of your mat. Knees, thighs, and shins glue together. Send your hips back to your heels. Take a child's pose. Walk your hands back towards your heels. Let your shoulders round forward. Just start to come back to your breath. Use your hands to press yourself back up into that hero's pose, that seat on your shins. Take a moment to reflect on all of the space you've created. Hopefully you feel a little lighter, a little more energized and driven, less weighed down by stress and anxiety and fear and anger. Maybe you had a revelation. A revelation to know that our breath is our tool to push out the dark, to bring in the light. Knowing that I see your light, your love, and that same light and love within me honors and bows to you. Thank you for practicing with me. I hope that this allowed you to come to a space of peace and light. Namaste. Awesome, you guys. Please feel free to practice this 1,000 times over. I love stretching the hips. If you notice that you had any pain or discomfort, please feel free to reach out and ask in what pose it was in. I will totally help you correct your alignment and get you to where you need to be so it's not so much of a pain as it is a pleasure, I guess. Cool. Again, as always, thank you guys for watching. I love you. I miss you. Take care of those hips. See you next time.